Thank you guys for joining us. We are here with Jasmine Diaz. And Jasmine, I will let you do like a little intro for yourself for the audience.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for having me here. I am a professional matchmaker and dating strategist. I work predominantly with Black professional singles, so that covers the diaspora of our beautifulness. So I have been a professional matchmaker for over 15 years. I think I'm hitting 18 at this point. And my clientele pretty much spans it's pretty broad, I guess you could say. So I work with professional singles, those that are like athletes and physicians, but also my most favorite group is just everyday people who are struggling with dating.
Um, so what are some things that determine match compatibility? Like, what are specific things that you look for when you're putting two people together?
That's a great question. And it's a little bit broad because what I like to look for when I'm considering people is really like the totality of the person that you are. So, what I do that's a little bit different than some of my counterparts is I spend a lot of time getting to know my clients at the very beginning stage because I recognize that every person searching for a partner is somewhat looking for the same thing, but they're also very different. And your approach to love, who you are as a person, is very different. So, where I like to first start is understanding who you are and what your life is like. What things matter to you, what wakes you up and makes you smile, what is your lifestyle. Those are the places that I like to go first because really, when you're thinking about compatibility, you have to think about who can actually fit with that. So if you're someone who's like an avid runner, and you're real athletic and you're into health and wellness and fitness, you have to consider like what qualities a person has to possess in order to be that for you. So those are the things that I am looking for whenever I talk to someone. I'm looking for common traits, common values, common goals is also a really important thing as well, because you might be going in one place and another person's going in the opposite direction. And so all of the things that I look for are those things, asking the client these questions so that I can determine what's a good fit for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Totally makes
Yeah,
sense.
that makes perfect sense. We have a audience question that I think is pretty interesting. Um, are people embarrassed about working with a matchmaker? Do you find any of your clients are, trying to keep it on the DL?
That's a great question because there are some people who do want to keep it low. And then there are those that definitely are, free to share and shout it from the rooftops. I think a lot of the shame kind of comes from where society expects people to be in their life. Um, People are expected, I think when you're in your 20s and your 30s, the expectation is you already got some kids, you have a career that's set, you're making a lot of money and you're happy. And a lot of people aren't there. So the desire to hire a matchmaker, I think, is one that a lot of people struggle with because financially, I'm not gonna lie, it takes some coin to really afford us. But the other side is that it is a real big investment. And for some people, it is a little bit of shame, like I'm not where everybody expects me to be. But then the other thing, because I work with Black professionals, I think statistically, Black people have a problem with asking for help. And help kind of comes in many different forms, right? Therapy being one of them, where we don't necessarily want to sign ourselves up for some of those help services, and matchmaking happens to be one of them. So if we're thinking about what's taboo, is this socially acceptable? I would say matchmaking falls under that category. So there's a group of people who really have a problem with it. But one thing I have noticed in the last couple of years, just from where I started to where I am now, the shame of matchmaking is starting to dwindle down quite a bit because there's popular television, there's Indian matchmaking. People are really excited about the position that matchmakers hold in the social construct, I guess you could say. So, so some of it is changing, but there is a little bit of shame.
I just wanted to comment really quickly on that, and shamelessly plug an episode that we did in the past, which was about societal deadlines, and how a lot of times we feel beholden to these things that everyone else is doing. And I know all three of us have struggled with that, especially in terms of dating. So I definitely want to say that that's a real feeling that a lot of people struggle with. Like, you're so correct that it's kind of like you look around in your late 20s, mid 20s, early 30s, and you're like, oh, I'm not married, or I don't have kids. Everyone else does. Dang. So that's real. But I'll toss to Amari next.
Yeah, you actually mentioned a few matchmaking reality TV shows. Is it? Sorry, I used to watch it. Is it Millionaire Matchmaker?
Yeah, there's Millionaire Matchmaker, there's
Yeah.
Indian Matchmaker, and there's been a couple of others since then.
Yeah, they've been cropping up, I think, more lately too. And I'm just wondering, well, this is actually an audience question, is how do you think these matchmaking reality shows influence client expectations?
That's a good one. Because I think most people have high expectations, and I think matchmaking shows don't necessarily help in a way. Because if we go back a little bit, like Millionaire Matchmaker, I think came out in the early 2000s, like 2005, 2006, somewhere around that. And the perception was, okay, I get my pick of a litter. I hire a matchmaker. I get to, hand select whoever I want. They're based on my dreams, and I can just have it. It just magically comes flowing to me. Where that's not the case, I think that's definitely a setup. Some of these shows really paint the picture a little too rosy. But I also think that just daters in general have high expectations of what matchmakers are capable of. It's not like we're magicians that have access to an unlimited supply of really good looking people that you can just choose from. So you're always having to deal with high expectations. But where it stems from differs from person to person, right? So sometimes it comes from television and the vantage point that comes with. But then there's also just everyday daters who just are really picky.
I feel like I always have high expectations.
Everybody does. They just don't want to admit it.
Yeah, but honestly, I do think watching Indian Matchmaker, I think because at least in that, there was a decent amount of clients who didn't get matched up. And it was like, that's just something that sometimes happens. Like, you bring someone an option and it just doesn't work out. And so that I was like, oh, that's, I didn't consider that. And even seeing the way the clients responded, it was like, it still helps them learn something about themselves. So like, you still gain something from the process. And I had never thought about it in that way.
Yeah. If I could say, like, one of the things about Indian matchmaking that I really enjoyed was how accurate it was about the client experience for the matchmaker, the picky people, just all of it was very true. It was probably the more realistic show that I've seen in a while, but of course it had its own issues with caste system and colorism. But here's what I'll say, even to the fact of how real that is, that's even real for matching for Black people. It's like you're dealing with colorism, you're dealing with size, issues. Everybody wants a figure 2 or 0, and having to combat all of those kinds of things, especially if you're a Black woman, if you're natural, you know what I'm saying, versus someone who wears a wig or a weave or flat irons. I mean, these kinds of things come up. So it was nice to see it kind of like shown a light on it in that way, even though it was predominantly Indian singles, but it is very true for Black singles.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's. Oh, sorry, Mari.
I was just gonna go based off of just like talking about how hard just like the process of choosing for Black singles, and like Do you have a hard time finding matches for Black clients? Like, I'm wondering how that
And
like them.
specifically Black women,
Yeah,
Yeah.
specifically Black women, because
because
we
it's struggle bus out here. I was just talking about it. It is struggle central. Okay.
I like how you said struggle bus because I feel that. I will say about 95% of my clients are Black women. So
Wow, that's
so
impressive.
that is my clientele. Maybe not 95, more like 90%.
That's
Is
a high
Black
amount,
women.
though.
Yeah, it is a very high amount, and I find that it's probably going to stay that way, predominantly because Black women are more forward thinking about seeking extra outside help and guidance. Like, we are the group that will pay for a coach, and for support, we will actually pour into ourselves in ways that our male counterparts won't. So it's not abnormal to see a lot of Black matchmakers work with women. So yeah. So in terms of that, I will say the struggle is definitely real, but it is not necessarily difficult for me to find singles for my clients. What becomes a little bit more difficult is finding the right person for that individual, because everybody has their own criteria of what they're looking for. And if we look at the landscape of dating and the conversations that are happening right now, one of the themes that I've seen quite frequently is about high value men and what that all means, whether you agree with it or not. And so having to combat each individual's idea of what a high value person is where the struggle really comes from matching. It's not finding guys. I find awesome Black professional well-to-do men all day. But when it comes to you specifically and what you want and what you find to be of high value and how that person might match up with you, that is the struggle.
Is the high
So
value, sorry. Is
we're
the
all so
high,
excited.
yeah, there's a lot to unpack, especially that your
Mhm.
clientele is 90 to 95% Black women. And you mentioned like a couple of things where like, okay, we're more like forward thinking. And I also wonder if like they're coming to you because they're having the most trouble where their counterparts aren't having trouble like finding people or like really particular about it. But also like what high value are they looking for in terms of like money, because we also do a lot of stats on this podcast about how Black women are like the percentage is more educated in the Black community and also making a certain amount of money, where like it's harder for Black women to find their counterpart, and simply just like education and salary, I guess. So what is like the high value that most of your clients are looking for that they feel that they're not seeing or getting?
Yeah, so I would say what's a common theme is actually something you touched on, which is education is big, you know. Income is going to be next. Third would probably be marital status. So not just like whether you're single or not, but also like kind of the family dynamics, whether you have kids, don't have kids, want kids. That's a big piece. And then spirituality, believe it or not, is another component. And I think that as Black people, we are very spiritual people. What that spiritual means to everyone is different. But I think by and large, we do lead a lot of our choices based on that life. And so when it comes to trying to find someone who's high value, you're meeting not just the financial value or the educational value, you're also talking about all the other ones, right? Are they a good parent? Do they have like the ability to be a good father? To support the family. Income is one component of it, but it's also about financial stability as being a piece of it. Do they have the same moral standards that I have? Where do they fall on the spiritual tree? Do they go to church regularly? Those are kind of the things that come up quite a bit. So my clients are looking for that. They are seeking that. And I find that most of my clients are not people who are incapable of finding it on their own, but their lifestyle dictates the difficulty, right? Like working several hours, not having time to go out to date, maybe perhaps living in a location that makes it very difficult for them to meet what they're trying to get to. Those are the types of people that come to me and most matchmakers. It's not for a lack of being desirable at all.
Now, a question I have, how do you feel about the apps? The dating apps, do you feel they're helpful? Do you feel they're completely stupid and terrible and no one should use them? Just what's your opinion on dating apps?
I'm a little biased. So
Okay.
here's my story. I
Okay.
met my husband online.
Oh my God.
So I'm going to be celebrating 19 years next month.
Aw.
So I'm still in my 30s though, okay? But so my opinion of online dating is that it works. And I know a lot of people who have met their partners online. So I'm actually an online dating advocate. However, I recognize that the system of online dating that is today is not where I came from. So, I haven't been on something that's similar to this in that long. So I, of course, understand the struggle is real on these apps. And some of the platforms make it very difficult for you to really weed out like the type of person. I think swipe culture has created a situation where people are less interested in finding who you are, like connecting with that individual, and more interested in arm candy. So if you're competing with arm candy as a person who maybe isn't that, arm candy like, but still a beautiful person, still, has great qualities, it could just be very hard to compete with that. So I understand that for many people, online dating is just not the thing. It's not the wave. But what I have been pushing lately is education on how to use the platforms in a smart way, because I recognize that there are ways in which you can navigate dating online and through apps in a way that gets you to your goal. But I also recognize that some people are just not great at online dating. So I am a little bit in the middle. I'm kind of like, yes, I love online dating, but I also see the difficulties.
If there were some tips that you could give someone, what would those be? I mean, right now I'm on the apps struggling. It's horrendous, horrendous, child. And I know our other listeners are too. So if you could just give like quick, dirty tips for things to do for online dating.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I can think about. So, I actually did a YouTube on this, ironically, this very thing about online dating. First thing is really think about what your purpose is on the platform and what kind of person you're trying to meet, because every single platform caters to a different demographic. So, a couple years ago, I did a conference called LoveCon, and I'm hoping to do it again soon. But the whole premise of the conference was to help people like navigate online. And in my process of doing this conference, I learned a lot about the different platforms of online dating. So I connected with Hinge and the League and Bumble, and found that each single platform's demographic is very different. So, you got the Tinders who have the reputation of being the hookup app. If your goal is to be in a casual relationship, consider which apps are for casual connections. If you are looking for something long term, think about that as well. And actually spend some time looking at the statistics of these apps. I think where people are doing themselves a disservice is they hear from a friend, oh, this app sounds cool. Let me download it. And then they get on it, and then they're pissed off that it's not really working for them, without actually thinking through, does this app actually serve me in the way that I need it to serve? So that's number one, is to think about like what you're trying to get out of your online dating experience. And then second, I would say is, once you have an idea of what that looks like and the app you're trying to target, spend some time really cultivating your profile, because I've seen many incomplete, no photos, got other people in there, like woke fishing, all of that, happening, going on in these apps. And it can be hard for someone to find someone like you if you're not putting your time and energy in some of these experiences that you hope to have. So I would say that's probably number two. My last advice to give is to give it time. I think we work in a space where everyone wants things quick, fast, in a hurry. I want to meet you tomorrow. I want to know if you have potential. Slow down, baby. there is no rush to this game. And I think that those people who want to have someone next to them immediately are the ones that aren't doing as well. But those that take their time do far better.